Hello.
Hello.
Good
Good morning, Angelique, even though it's afternoon for me. How are you?
Yes. Hi, I'm good. I'm good. Just let me just turn this off because I was seeing if everything was going to go all right with our YouTube live stream because we're
Yeah,
premiering
we've
on
added that.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, so welcome
Yeah.
everybody. My name is Angelique Sloop. I'm the founder and host at Hello Monday Club. And I'm here with Trevor, our amazing co host, and we have this weekly chat that we started to do live after we have been having weekly chats in a private set for about 2 years. We're talking about the future of work and addressing different topics. I think we talked each other through the pandemic and all the developments that we faced and that the world faced. And
Yeah.
in this year, we started to use this amazing live stream opportunity to get other people involved in the conversations. So we've done it on LinkedIn for the last few weeks, and this is the premiere on YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, say hi and let us know if everything is okay because we're kind of excited. It's a new feature. Everybody on LinkedIn Live, of course, welcome. Leave a comment, say where you're from, let us know why you're interested in today's topic. Please be involved, be engaged because it's interactive. And today's topic, Trevor, tell
Yes.
us.
Well, and also I think just before we start, it's worth saying that you've got me under strict orders not to make you laugh at all today, because otherwise you're going to have a coughing fit
It's true.
and you'll
I
have
have
to
I
go
have
on
a
mute.
cold. I have a cold, so if I just if I just go away, if I disappear, then I'm backstage coughing. So,
Yeah.
but let's try. Hopefully, with a little bit of calm, I'll make it to the end of the show today.
Yeah, so today we're talking about one of my favorite topics in general, like really, really big, which is mindsets
Hmm.
and paradigms and that sort of thing. And we're taking a bit of a zoom in on something that obviously we've been talking about for a long time, and also companies we know have been talking about for a very long time, which is whether or not you are an office first or remote first. And they may not have been using those terms, but you and I have worked with lots of different companies who have got a sort of existential question, and they started to ask it probably about a year ago, and some companies are only just asking this now, and that is fundamentally, what are we? And it sounds really odd, but actually that is the point, that we've got to, at least some organizations are brave enough to ask themselves that question. And we're hopefully today going to be
Yeah.
kind of talking about it in a way that will help them to answer that for themselves and help each person to think about their role in making it clear what the mindset of their organization is.
Well, exactly. I don't really fully agree with you because I think the companies that are asking themselves that question are very, very rare. And most companies are not aware that those two mindsets or like concepts exists. And they talk about hybrids. So there's
Yeah.
like a lot of like we're going to go to a hybrid workplace, while we are aware that if you approach hybrids with two different mindsets in your organization, if in the base they are conflicting mindsets, you will create all kinds of problems. And today that's going to be addressing. So we're going to have a look at what is the hybrid workplace, how would it look,
Mm.
and what are the mindsets that you can have, why is it problematic, and also in the end, because we are mainly inviting here all you guys, future work leaders, people involved in workplace transformation in whatever role. You could be the director of people, but you could also be a team lead or just an employee who wants to create a better workplace for themselves and their team. You're all a future of work leader in our view, invited to join these conversations, give your opinion, because we're all learning. This is what we're all about, learning and sharing and creating more value while we are together creating a new world of work. So, yes, um, so what's happening at the moment? We see companies moving to a hybrid workplace. Um, I'm just going to change the. Oh, I didn't mean to lose you, Trevor, but
That's okay. I
we
won't take
still
it personally.
we still have a little bit of the different expectations here what's happening in the with the technology and in the show. But hybrid working. So I made it as simple as the whole concept, as simple as I could brought it back to what we just see mainly is people they're moving or they're saying that they want to be 2 or 3 days in the office and 2 or 3 days at home or elsewhere. This is basically what we see in most of the companies and most of the people in most of the companies are saying. So this is, where we're going to. There is people will be like, let's say 50% in the office, let's say 50% at home during those 5 days the 5 working days.
Yeah.
Well, that's not too excited at all. But then we can move to those 2 mindsets. Before I show you the 2 mindsets, I want to talk a little bit about the another thing we see, just for people to understand before we move to the remote first and office first mindset. We're probably familiar with the fixed mindset and the growth mindset as models.
Right.
So obviously, these models are helpful to understand why some people approach change and disruptions differently than others. We can compare that. We should be aware that nobody is in a full time, always, all the time in a growth mindset.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
when it comes to all those things, somebody could be in a growth mindset when it comes to work or something crazy, but they could be in a very fixed mindset when it comes to family issues. So we have to be aware that those models, nobody is 100% there. Like nobody's 100% in a fixed mindset. Maybe some people, but usually people, because we're always evolving. So we all have a tendency to learn and to adapt and to change.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and just if you think about that, it might be also good to think about that when we move to this, the office first and the remote first mindset. So
yeah, I mean, I think I was going to say,
sorry.
I think what helps us then when it comes to talking about mindsets with office first and remote first, and also for those people who are familiar with growth and fixed mindset, is it's more like a lens that you're choosing for a particular situation. So what we'll find is that quite often people choose a kind of leaders, for example, in organizations will choose an office first mindset, and then they'll design their strategy with an office first mindset down. It doesn't mean that that's the only way they think about things, but they may have brought that lens to help, or indeed a remote first mindset. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about this idea that it kind of informs a lot of other decisions.
Trevor, you are a little bit frozen there. You froze there for a moment. Yes, and I also think in this, before we move to those 2 descriptions, hybrids, like it's, as I say, it's like people are going to go 2 to 3 days in the office, and it means that those 2 mindsets, you will not see the difference. It might look exactly the same for one company that has an office first mindset and another company has a remote first mindset. In practice, it might look from the, but what can happen is that the outcome over the course of the next few years might be entirely different. So because you will not see, well, our employees are in the office, like 80% of the employees in the office, like 2 times a week, 3 times a week. Oh yes, in our company as well. But how you manage the culture, the mindset, the policies, the performance indicators, it could all be very, very different. The results, the retention rates, the way you can attract talents, the kind of talents that you attract, it could lead to very, very different outcomes. So if you're on that crossroads now to decide, it's important that you know that the mindset, the underlying mindset that you choose for this hybrid workplace will determine where you end up as a company.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. That's if you can still hear, that's exactly why thinking of it as a mindset is more important than it might have been previously, because of how the ripple-on effects that it has. So this is why we're using that language today, and this is why we often use that language in other settings, because it's a much better way of understanding how that might fall.
Yes. So for the viewers, also if you watch the replay later, what do you think an office first or remote first mindset is before we go into it? So if you can take a few seconds to leave it in the comments, and then we'll circle back to it later. So you have to also understand there is a delay in live streams, as I've been told, up to 10 seconds. So we will not address it quite quickly, but we'll just come back later in when you had a chance to answer. So to show the model right now again. So you can have a hybrid organization with the two mindsets. This is just this is obviously not everything, but we just came up with those descriptions to get you to get people understanding what the difference is. So in an office first mindset, we assume consciously or subconsciously that collaboration takes by default place in an office setting, together, face to face, in a room like this where I'm in at the moment. We see working away from the office, it's allowed because we are in a hybrid organization, but it is limited. For example, we say you can do maximum 2 days, maximum 3 days. It is seen as the exception. So it is an exception on, the general way of working. And it can, so they're not what we see in policies that people say, well, our hybrid organization, people can have 2 days at the outside, 3 days, but if the work requires it or the manager wants it, the people will be called back and be obliged to come to the office. It also involves, and this is where, already it gets interesting, it involves continuously defining activities that can be done away from the office or need to take place in the office. So teams, managers, policymakers, business unit directors, they're going to be constantly saying, well, but people need to be in the office for this. But this is something you can do away from the office. So that will be continuously a part of the discussion.
It's a good way of describing it.
If you would be going to a remote first mindset, in your way of thinking, for everything you can do, both the holistic work, the individual work, or the collaboration work, you can say everything we do is by default in an online virtual working environment. You might have an office, you might not have an office, but you might, let's say you have an office because you're in a larger company. The office is seen as an addition on top of that to make life easier. For example, a place where people can go to have good coffee, be away from their own home if they don't have a good working space at home, where they can meet each other if they want. So it's where they can find facilities. It's a place. It's like a co-working place where I'm at the moment. I go here. I don't work from home. I work from a co-working space because for all those reasons, because of the facilities that I find here that I don't have at home simply. And then you can say that with a lot of companies would by default in the office first mindset say this is something that we need to come together for face to face. In a remote first mindset, this will all take place virtually if needed and on site if desired. So it gives you that freedom to choose. Anything what you want to add here, Trevor?
No, I think you can sort of see it in the language. There's a couple of things. So one is that there's no such thing as an office first organizational mindset, really. It's built up through individual mindsets. So if you've got a number of leaders who all think office first, then you'll have the sensation of being an office first organization. And I think that's quite important because otherwise it can feel really disempowering that this huge organized unreal entity has a mindset and you can't change that, which you can, because the reality is it's through a number of different years. The other thing I was going to say is it shows up in the language. So, you know, you a great example of like someone being called back into the office is a really good way of thinking about it. If I get called back into the office, that's an office first mindset. A question for you, Angelique. So my question is, which of these mindsets is most likely to invest in third spaces? So alternatives to people go and work. Do you think it like falls into any one of these categories, or is it somewhere in the middle?
I didn't get that because the connection broke.
Oh,
What
I'm
kind
sorry.
of?
So I was just saying, what kind of organisation invests in third spaces? So invests in co-working spaces outside of main offices.
I would that's part of remote first mindset. Because you
Yeah,
see,
that's what I
again, you
was
can
thinking.
see
Yeah,
that second bullet. The office is seen as an addition, but an office could also be a co-working space. So this
yeah,
is also moving away from the idea that a company has a fixed, that is their address, and that also the people come to work.
yeah,
So I can
yeah.
have, actually, my company Hello Money is based in the Netherlands, and I am like in a co-working space in Brazil. And I'm a freelancer, so
Yeah.
not even at the same place. Don't it's already confusing for like bureaucracy. And you are in the UK, so
Mhm.
and you often work from co-working spaces as well as we work together.
Yeah,
So and well, we are totally remote first because we've never even met in person. Don't
exactly.
laugh, don't
I mean,
laugh.
I guess one way of thinking about it is that in the office first mindset, the organizational identity is often wrapped up in a place or a few places, isn't it? It's wrapped up in the kind of identity of the office. Whereas in remote first, it's less so, and therefore they're far more other places can go, and it's more around the practicality of either collaborating or the practicality of the technology or something like that, rather than
Yeah.
you need to come together for this purpose, and therefore you need to all be in the same space.
I have another question for you. So, what problems do you think can arise in a company if you have those two different mindsets, and you do not address that those mindsets exist, but you talk about the hybrid workplace,
Yeah,
and people think they're
yeah.
talking about the same thing, but they have the different mindsets. So, what do you think that is? How can this what kind of problems do you think will arise? What kind of discussions people will have?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll see. We talked quite about tension in our last session. You'll see probably two types of tension. One is going to be organisational policy saying one thing, typically talking about uh, the office first mindset, because that is the same. That's got a kind of control mindset to it. So they've got a control mindset, and then there's people wanting freedom. And then the other
Mhm.
place I think it will show up even more is in line manager relationships, supervisory relationships, because there'll be this sense of, well, we've got a team meeting, so therefore you have to be in the office because, we're talking about all the stuff and it's very spontaneous and that only happens in person. And then in reality, actually, we know, you and I know, for our own experience from working with a number of companies that are really good at this, that that's not necessarily true. Lots of individuals will know necessarily true. And so that what they'll struggle with is think and let themselves be heard. Yeah, and I'm defaulting to the organisation is office first, and the individuals or some individuals and some teams are remote first because
Mhm.
that tends to be what we see. There's going to be a there, and there'll be conflict, and they won't be talking the same language, so it'll be really difficult to get it across. Organisations often talk about the need for collaboration in person, and of course, we know that is better in person, but it's not the same as necessary. And so there's almost like an imaginary bar that says, here's when you come into the office, here's when you choose to spend time together in person, and then here's the bar where actually you're choosing to go home, and the bars are kind of flipped, and so you've got all this middle ground of where it's a little bit ambiguous. And if you all
Mhm.
had the same mindset, then you'd just be able to make decisions. You'd be able to make empowered decisions, and you'd land in the same place most of the time. Where there is that difference, what tends to happen is the organisation then goes, right, so we need to be clear on something, not even the whole thing, but on some parts of this policy, so that everyone starts to behave consistently. And that tends to be, again, the kind of the safe place for an office first mindset rather than home
Mhm.
first. And it tends to be the case. Office first have higher control and then remote first tend to have less control and a more empowered workforce.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's a minefield if you have an office first mindset, and especially already if everybody in the company has an office first mindset and tries to implement a successful hybrid working policy,
Yeah,
that is already a minefield, because people will be like, yeah, but for this I need to be in the office, but I can't, and I actually don't really agree that. And I had one.
yeah,
I was working with a leadership team, and somebody said, well, there has to be rules because there was a policy that gave a lot of freedom and a lot of space for
yeah,
interpretation. And then the leadership team was like, okay, how are we going to deal with this like very broad policy? Which I think in the base is good to have this kind of really broad policy, giving a lot of space.
yeah,
But then the leadership team started to figure out how, what does it actually mean. You could see those two mindsets kind of floating around in the workshop as well. Um,
yeah,
and it already saying, okay, you know, this continuously defining the different activities that you can do from home, or that that your manager is going to be deciding, and then your peers are going to have an opinion about that, and your teammates, and then HR needs to have an opinion, and then and then like a team lead is going to be saying, okay, I don't mind if people work from home, and then another team lead from the same department is like, well, but that sounds weird, because how can you actually be effective in collaboration if you let all your people work from home? So it will it will lead to endless discussions. And I think even if you add to that there will be maybe 10%, or let's say 5% of people in your company that came from a remote first mindset, of that never been, you onboarded them during the pandemic in the last 2 years, so they never even set foot in your office, and they're going to be like, I don't really see why I need to come to this office on a Friday afternoon for some drinks. So
yeah,
it's just like, I was just like, I'm gonna
yeah,
meet my mates, because that's what I've been doing the last 2 years of my life, and I don't see
yeah,
why I need to change that. And how are you gonna deal with that? Because then you have those like, I spoke to a company that 25% of their employees was being onboarded in the last 2 years. So they've never, and how are you gonna, let's say that most of them have adopted this remote first mindset, plus a few that's got really used to it, and then you have it.
yeah,
So it's going to be very. I don't. I just foresee there's a lot of problems, and I think you will not change that overnight. But as soon as you start
no,
addressing that there are two mindsets, then you will
yeah,
create a
yeah,
lot of clarity and saying, okay, we are speaking two languages here. And this is where I want to have a question, because I have a small exercise for the people. Write down in the comments, and if you can do that also later, because this will all be still visible on both on LinkedIn and YouTube, like two examples that from your own organization, that the language that people will use if they have a office first mindset or a remote first mindset. So what
yeah.
is your example for that, Trevor?
Um, Darn it, I think I already used when I said about like you're only call you back to the office. Like that's almost like a leash, like one of those leashes that you use with a dog, and you can press the button, it pulls back. It's almost that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
Trying to think of those. I think remote first mindset. The it's maybe less obvious in the language because it's got less of that control element to it. But I would hear people saying things like, "Oh, well, let's just jump on a call, and let's just kind of let's thrash this out." And there's no explicit kind of, it needs to be in this place or it needs to be in that place. Going back to your example of, like, it tends to be allocated, and they're often checking in, is it okay if it's in this format or that format? You just set up a meeting, and if people happen to be in the office, then great, and if they're not, then they're somewhere else. And I think what we're seeing, one of the clashes is people are kind of have a remote first mindset. So they're just like, I can always attend a meeting as long as I'm free. And then the kind of office first mindset will be going, well, why aren't you here? It's this kind of
Okay.
meeting and you should be here, or arranging for it to happen, and can be there.
So I'm
I'm
going to
coughing
ask a
now.
question. As somebody said to me, we have a remote first mindset because there is a meeting and there's one person is not in the office in the meeting room, then they can actually join on Zoom, and we are now used to that person being involved, and we are not overcoming that. So there's like a bunch of people, and then the 1 or 2 people not there, and they call that a remote first mindset. Would you put that in the office first mindset or in the remote first mindset?
No, that's office first. That's definitely office first, and we have a real issue because we know. So the strange thing is, the people who have got like an office first might say things like, well, collaboration is better in the office, and I don't disagree with that potentially. What we haven't clarified, and no one's had the conversation, there's not enough data out there, is how much better is the office. But we know there's a difference. And so then you say, well, if that means disadvantaging people who either need to be remote or choose to be remote, because they're going to interact with you differently from the people in the room. That's where it matters more. If you took people and put them on the same task, and one lot had to do it remotely and one lot had to do it in person, they would adjust to their circumstances. Apparently, the best research says there's a lot of difference. But if you're trying to get people to do both at the same time, there is a definite social difference. There's a social equity that exists when you're a person and not on remote. So those people haven't got around how stuff happens remotely and make that kind of thing work. Was that the right answer?
Okay. Yeah. So interesting enough. So if we have 2 mindsets, let's say it's actually true what we are saying here. So this is my statement, my prediction for the future. If everybody is two or 3 days in the office or outside office, it means that 50% of your workforce is not co-located during the week. And that means in practice that some people will never be at the same office because it's just not going to happen. So in the end, it is necessary to move towards a remote first mindset, because otherwise it will have endless problems. You will not be as flexible, not be as resilient, not be as attractive as an employer, not be able to meet the needs of individual employees. So in the end, we have to move to remote first mindset, which is a long way. I think that could take up to 10 years for many companies to get there. So start today. And it doesn't mean that you don't have an office, because you can have an office where people come 2-3 days a week. Have a remote first mindset. What is your prediction in this area, Trevor? Do you agree?
Yeah, I do, and I think you're very clever with the language used in this statement, because there's a lot of times people will say things like, "Oh, well, they're working remote today," and I would go, "Well, remote from whom?" Because everyone, if one member of your team is remote and your team collaborate, then everyone from someone. And the definition tends to come from the place, the building that's got the name of the office. But the weird thing is, if they had 80% of their team working from home and 20% in the building, they would call the 80% still remote. So there's a shift here where you're saying, well, as soon as you say that collaboration is different, or as soon as you say that something needs to be different if you're not in the same place, it doesn't matter who is in the head office and who's working from home. You are all remote from one another in some way. So this is where I think your prediction is perfect. Effectively, as long as not everyone is in the same place, you are a remote team, and virtually no one that we talk to anyway, because they often come to us not, virtually no one that we talk to has got their head around that. You are essentially remote if any part of your team is in the same location.
Exactly. And thank you for the spoiler alert for next week's workshop that I'm going to do all by myself, because you'll be on the
I can't make it. I'll be spending time with my kids, which you I think I'm off the hook, aren't I, right?
Yeah, but it is like, but this is like the spoiler alert for like the answer on next week's workshop, why the hybrid workplace does not exist. But you're right, most companies do not get their head around it. So I developed a leadership workshop for an executive leadership team from a large company, where I presented basically where I challenged the concept of hybrid place, and exactly what you said was one of the highlights. I'll take a very I've created that into a mini workshop that, it's like really one of the best work that we've done, and that will be presenting live in the mini workshop next week. So please keep an eye on the YouTube channel and on the LinkedIn page and on our newsletter to be subscribed to those events. And then for today, because we already over time, well, not really. I think we still have a few minutes. But what I wanted to show, just like, because it's nice that people understand that. It's nice that people understand that the two mindsets, and even that will lead in over the coming years to a remote first mindset, and it's inevitable. And if you don't do that, then you brace yourself for a lot of like a rough ride in your company. But as you are a future work leader, and as said, we are all future work leaders, but especially if you are in the position in your company that you are leading the strategic discussion, that you're in charge of policies, that you're in charge of selecting collaboration tools, or how to make these decisions about when people should be coming to the office, what your hybrid work policy actually will look like in practice, and you want to address those two mindsets, which I think that you should be doing. So these are 4 things that we just want to give tells you that you can start doing right now. There's a lot more, but I think it is about creating awareness. So start to stand, and this is why we did the little exercise. If you hear the people, you can start to understand what their mindset is. So create that awareness that those two mindsets exist in a safe way, because you should be judging people for having an office first mindset, because we've been programmed that way, and it's just like it's so embedded in our values and the way we think. But we have to create that awareness and open the discussion in a safe way to move towards a new mindset, and we have to do that together. And I just create a discussion in a safe way, create a long-term vision, so that idea, like what in 10 years from now we probably end up having this totally virtual, global distributed way of working around the world. So we have to start thinking like that already today. And in a very sense, if you are looking for collaboration tools, or ways how to collaborate, or like, let's say, we want to do some social activity for create engagement in the team, opt always for the virtual solution, even if you have an office, but make sure that our virtual solution is in place. Any additions, Trevor? What would you advise? You are the
I'll just
L&D
really
leadership.
push. I would really push on the long-term vision piece, because I think when people start to think long-term, they get a lot more and they get a lot more ambitious. If you start with that end in mind and work backward, far more likely to further and test things and stretch the organization and challenge leadership. So I think that long-term vision is really important for unlocking creativity and imagination in what the organization could be like. And that's what you need to switch, I'm assuming, from an office work first mindset into a remote first mindset. You need that.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it is about this idea that even with a hybrid working policy, people thinking like, okay, how's that going to be working next week? But if you start to say, okay, what do we think that our company will look like in 3 years from now? Then, as you said, that is the long-term vision. So that's also already mindset, like this short-term, like, hey, how I'm going to, somebody's asking me if they can start traveling for 3 months in this summer. How we're going to deal with that. So we're going to think, well, what kind of company would we want to be in 3 years from now? Would that be something that would happen more often? It doesn't mean we have to, facilitate it now, but maybe we can say, well, this is a little bit too soon because we have stuff to sort out. But it's definitely something that we want to be looking in over the next few years.
Yeah, yeah. I think once you've got that steps and it all feels more manageable. It's kind of it's true for like any organisational change. You want to kind of go big and small and big and small. So you look big, you look out to the horizon, you decide what to do now, and then you look back up to the horizon again, and then you decide what steps you can take. And you have to keep doing that. And good leaders know that that's the best way to initiate change. So, your guidance is very much in line with how we know change.
Cool. Yes. Thank you, Trevor. I found this a very fascinating topic.
Thank you, Angie.
And I'm in one way or another, we will always be circling back to the area, as we say, it's all about mindset. And that organizational change, the future of work, we always have to reflect on our mindsets, everything that we learn about work and the place that has in our life before we can go to substantial change. And it's really exciting to be on this journey and to bring amazing leaders together in Hello Monday Club, where we have in-depth discussions in our mastermind groups. We are sharing our insights from our clients and from our memberships here on the LinkedIn Live with the broader audience. So please come and say hi, subscribe on the newsletter, keep on joining the conversation. Send us a message if you have a question. We're always here. We're open to share and to learn together. And then that's it. We'll see you next week. I'm wishing you a great holiday. Enjoy.
Yes, thank you very much. One in 2 weeks' time. I'll see you and everyone else in 2 weeks' time. So yeah, I will.
Yes.
All right.
And
take care, Angelique.
Yes. Bye-bye.